with light mode, and also we are going to move on to Fnatic versus Vitality game number 1. So, before we dive into it, we'll remember a bit about Fnatic. Now, Fnatic are not really a team you can summarize in terms of their champion picks, because I think they went from a very discrete style to evolving over time. Especially Broxah, he's been the person who's really kind of redefined his role as a player over the course of the season. Like, he seemed to be playing for his lanes as if they were Caps and Bwipo in a carry meta, and it just wasn't that, and I think that really confused their game plan. But since that time, I think Broxah's made some really smart adjustments to his play. Reckless and Hylissang have looked once again super on top, and Bwipo and Nemesis have kind of taken turns playing their role in terms of stepping forward and backward, and in a very responsible way. So I think overall, Fnatic have looked like a really good team, and the theory was they picked Team Vitality because they're going to be able to wait out Vitality. They're going to be able to kind of weather the storm, and that there's no way Vitality beats Fnatic in the late game, was the theory going into the series that was going to be tested. And then you get Vitality, who just never really hit a groove after the start of the season. At the start of the season, this kind of purple patch here between the Splice series and the Rogue series, like, you look at these teams, and it's Fnatic out of form, and it's Origin out of form, and so in hindsight, it's not as impressive, but I was really impressed with how they were able to integrate Mowgli super early in the season into being a very powerful, aggressive jungler and counter-jungling through him, and then trying to find leads from there. And to me, Vitality were always a team that played the side lanes really, really well in a 1-3-1. So Jizuke on Ryze, Jizuke on Teleport LeBlanc. That's the team I think of, and those are his most played champions. Cabochard this season was able to step up as a carry, and for that he should be respected. After the initial Urgot phase, I think Cabochard had a lot of good games and deserved his MVP standings. But I think the moment Jizuke was out of the roster and came back in, the groove just never came together towards the end of the season. Like, they really kind of limped into playoffs. They lost to XL in the final week, SK in a, insane series, right? That SK series is, was it like fastest loss in Europe in a long time, right? Like, they seemed, and then the duo lane, which is very reliable. Very reliable sounds strong, but like, I think Attila and Jack Troll always kind of played their own way, but they weren't dying 2v2 and making really poor decisions for the majority of kind of the successful phases. And now, unfortunately, they really had powered down. So it was one of those things where I kind of agreed with Frost's initial assessment of like, damn, isn't it bold to choose the team that shaped worlds and the team that could, Vitality has like a 15% chance to beat any team in the world, any game. You know what I mean? Like, if Vitality's game goes their way and their aggressive moves pay off, like, it doesn't really matter what you do. They just kind of win the game from how well they can play 1-3-1 from ahead. But all the intermediate steps they're so rusty on that things kind of never came together. And Jizuke also has not been taking over games in the side lane like he was able to in previous seasons. So it just really didn't come together for Vitality. And yet it still felt a bit bold. Like, it still felt like, what if he lost to Vitality? Because, like, their plan actually worked this time. And I guess the counter argument was, in 5 games, it was unlikely to happen. So it was Vitality or SK. And they, they chose Splice. So they chose SK, and I chose Vitality, I should say, and I think they would have been able to standard out a team like SK, but this was just a real confident read on scrims or scrim culture or just how two teams natively are there. And the read is, if Fnatic get their items and Vitality run at them with similar items, Fnatic always win. And I can kind of understand that, Interesting, just a small point, but Youngbuck also wanted to pick Spice before Vitality, but they couldn't pick 4th place. There was, of course, the point about being a little bit intimidated by Selfmade in the SK series. And that part, I guess, doesn't surprise me, because I think SK and Splice almost occupy that same spot in your mind if you're Fnatic. But clearly they had their respect in Selfmade. All I'm saying is, like, I do think it was bold, right? It is bold to pick Vitality because of what Vitality could be, but what Vitality is, especially by the end of the season, then it becomes less bold, right? They really did creak in to the end of the season. So let's let into game number 1, Fnatic versus Vitality. And a lot of my review today, I want to be a test on the hypothesis that Fnatic entered in with, which is we will always outlast Vitality. Because they, even Buppo in his interview was talking about how that was like they were very aware of carry picks and the style Vitality would take, but they were confident that they would be able to get through it. So, starting up the pick and ban. So first pick Karthus against Vitality, also pretty bold, right? Because you think about Vitality again, and you think Mowgli is going to want to play an invading jungler and contest at enemy camps. But Karthus, from what we've watched today, and even to see LCK games, is more and more resilient at being invaded than we initially anticipated. And I think that Boxer has also had some really creative jungle paths to get a lead on Karthus. For example, the G2 series, they had a really nice late invade on Karthus. And if I'm Vitality, I expect a late invade from the Karthus, just because that's something they've already shown they like to do on the Karthus as a blue side team. Very interesting, by the way. I didn't point out to it, but it's something I noticed in preparation. 10-2 blue side, 1-4 red side is Fnatic. Such a different team, right? This alone tells you a lot about what a team is like, because Fnatic last year, you could see them wanting to last pick for Caps, or take a Flex Assassin and last pick a Great Lane for Bwipo. But they get very little value out of red side this season, and it's very interesting that they had this much of a dichotomy between their blue side and red side games. Like they were choosing blue side a whole of a lot in their run-in towards the end there. So blue side gives you a priority pick that potentially can be one of the ways to close out, and it kind of just ends up guaranteeing you less counter picks. But yeah, very interesting to see. Such a blue side favorite for a team that used to be like, which counter pick will Caps get? You know what I mean? So first round continues. Braum Jarvan is a duo on the red side we've discussed already today, and I think it'll be a very common duo, kind of a lockdown duo that doesn't really show much about your draft. And in EU, you even threaten the top lane flex on the Jarvan, so that's very standard. From there, it's just a power draft from the side of Fnatic. They're happy to first round Brox's Nemesis pick because they pick Lissandra, who basically has no losing matchups that work. Like the Zoe matchup doesn't work anymore, you know? And no one is willing to play the actual counters. And the actual counters, if you're wondering, are the super outrange champions. Like, you think of Xerath. Like, Xerath is pretty good against Lissandra. But the problem is that you take Aftershock and you walk up to the lane, and at the times when you are most likely to be poked down as Lissandra, you're still threatening a jungler play or things like that. Like, it feels like the gank assist that Lissandra reliably provides with Aftershock means that even tough lanes can be salvaged way more than they could before. Swain is the pick that's been mentioned in chat. We saw it already played today. As long as you don't get snowballed on and are happy to give up lane control, Swain is also pretty good. But we've seen Swain just ganked and killed a lot in LCK and LPL. In the EDG IG series, actually, that happened. So because of that, the Swain pick is one that I think teams will explore more, and regions outside of EU will be able to get more value out of. But yeah, Lissandra just is working in a way that is kind of super reliable. And then we saw this Talia pick. Now, obviously, this is a big roaming mid laner for Jizuke, so your assumption is this is mid lane Talia. It's fine against Lissandra. You can take Cleanse and go Banshee Veil and sort of be fine. You can also just roam out of the lane and not care as much. Lissandra actually has more control over the minion wave than than Talia does. It's kind of changed so much at this point. Used to be that Talia could push this in and roam hard, but Aftershock Lissandra seems to push in and roam better than any Talia rune can take in the mid lane. So Just a difference in evolution, how things have gone. Gonna move forward. So jungle, mid lane, and AD carry taken compared to jungle, support, and mid lane. So makes sense to ban either top lane or support picks from Fnatic if you are Vitality. They've already got Braum, and it's not like Braum has too many terrible matchups. Like, and the ones that are kind of a little bit left field, no one plays. Now, because you have so many pick tools, you could have understood like maybe a Tahm Kench ban, but Hylissang is normally on the engage support, so I guess they decide not to go that way. And then AD carry picks for Attila. Like, he's had such an eclectic pool, right? Like, what do you even... Against Vayne, like, Tristana's a decent ban, but I think it's kind of whatever scenario here. You can ban Braum if you want to ban Lucian Braum out, but if Lucian Braum is left open, it does kind of play into your original theory of outlasting. Like, you kind of just want to outlast if you're Fnatic. So if they go Lucian, it's a champion that, yes, can hit the ground running and try to beat you when you're strong, but it's not a must ban. Kind of interesting to see the Yorick ban. Like, Yorick is a champion that I think has had a lot more bark than bite in pro play. Like, there's been very few successful Yorick games around the world. And there are definitely some strong matchups into it you can choose to play, especially with someone like Bwipo, but they don't go that way. And then the Lucian's locked in. In hindsight, it was confirmed that they were aware of the Lucian flex, and it's something that Bwipo mentioned. So Lucian is someone who can lane into some stuff top lane for sure, can go mid lane as well. So you're blind picking top, and you're also dealing, you get to counter pick support. You could have done that earlier. They're just going to go Alistar. So just one engage to Fnatic, and that's valid. LEC has had the highest Alistar priority of any region, especially recently. They've been playing a whole lot of it, which is a bit of a surprise. And then they take the GP again, and like, this is pretty bold. So the reason why they do this, why is GP taking it? Because obviously GP got schooled by Ryze, is that they take GP in both games to have ults that can help bot lane. Because now GP can ult bot, Lissandra roams bot first over a Talia, and Karthus can ult bot from the jungle. So this is very much to guarantee Vayne Alistar laning phase. If you're wondering why GP is taken pseudo-blind, like, maybe they're saying they picked it into Lucian, which seems a bit bold, but you can get through that matchup. But largely this is taken for the ultimate value to be able to ult bot lane and be fine. So that's why GP is such like a prized pick. I think we're seeing quite a bit for Fnatic, as it helps guarantee Reckless and Hylissang's laning phase. And what can otherwise be a very tricky lane, if it is Lucian Braum. Get the confirmation at the end. That's going to be Ezreal Braum. I'm not really a fan of Ezreal Braum as a duo. Like, I don't think they do anything very well. The only thing they're good at doing is being super safe. So you end up with the Lucian ability to just smash down onto GP. In this spot, like, if the call is that Mowgli's going to spend all of his time topside, Zuke's going to roam top, then I guess I understand Ezreal Braum. Otherwise, you kind of want something a bit more interesting. Like, Kalista Braum could have been pretty strong in this spot. I think you could have also considered something like, what's the champion I'm thinking? I think you don't like Sivir in this spot for sure, right? Sivir's like double counterpicked by Vayne and Alistar. I think Ashe in this spot. I mean, Ashe Braum is not a great duo lane, but so that's kind of a wonky one. There was something that I had in the front of my mind, but it's kind of slipping my mind right now. But I actually was a little bit taken aback that it ended up being Ezreal Braum. But it's kind of safe and not much else for Ezreal Braum. Jinx is the one. So someone mentioned Jinx is the one here I would have really thought, because Attila plays a lot of Jinx. And I think Jinx Braum like the enemy front line is temporary tankiness. Like Jinx AoE crits do a huge number on Karthus, right? Because Karthus like fishes for a Q and takes a half of his health. So I was thinking Jinx. We've seen Kog'Maw in other regions. I imagine that Kog'Maw was something that Vitality just had in practice. But the laning matchup into Vayne that's said to be good was the Kog'Maw. The Kog'Maw does well in lane against Vayne, and just the outrange for a lot of the fight can be really strong. But the problem is that Vayne with Lucian Talia frontline is... Kog'Maw, sorry, with Lucian Talia frontline is not that strong. So I actually don't mind skipping up the Kog'Maw here, because I think Kog'Maw just playing for lane wouldn't be enough. And then you wouldn't have a frontline in the 5v5. So at least Jinx can like speed around and be relevant with no frontline if you get that first kill. And they got a lot of burst damage to try. So still the draft plays into expectations. Jizuke on a roaming mid laner, Cabochard on a counterpick top laner, and Vitality are going to want to punish Fnatic super hard, because Fnatic went for GP blind. And then it's, you know, Vayne Alistair in a decent matchup, but not a fantastic one. So this is still plays into the expected kind of cadence of this series. And that's why game one was so important to me. I really did think that Vitality had to win game number one to get a strong start here. That was cute. Cute start trying to pincer the Alistair by running into lane fast, but Hillsong smart, you scale, you just skill W level 1, gets you the aftershock resist and you'll be fine. The world's most obvious topside invade comes in, because this is what Broxah has done before. This is how they approach the Karthus drafts. It's obviously the correct move by Fnatic, because 3 people revealed themselves bot side, 4 people even. Very, very standard invade here. It's a late invade they've made before, and the side of Vitality showed multiple members. So you're able to walk up, get lots of information on the jungle path here, and just try to relieve pressure from Broxah as much as possible. Braum already started roaming up, so actually it was smart of Fnatic not to fully engage here, as the Braum could have come in and contested the buff towards the end of the spawn. Fnatic trying to weather the storm as the game goes on. While they don't have a ultra powerful front line, they definitely have a lot of zone control, and then Vitality themselves have a squishy front line, even if Mowgli ends up going for something like Cinderhulk. So in that world, you know, you could definitely see Vayne just taking over this game. But with everything, like I'm a bit underwhelmed by the Ezreal last pick. Like, I don't think Ezreal got them much apart from some safety in the 2v2. But it's only safety. It's not a winning 2v2 in any big way, apart from certain breakpoints, like level 2, I would say. Level 1 especially, right? But level 1, maybe level 3, but like it's a bit underwhelming of a final pick here that I don't think got Vitality too much. And then Broxah, who, you know, is going to take Karthus' first pick wherever it's available. You look at how this game is playing out, and it's very much going to be about Broxah power farming and what can Mowgli do. Can he get the counter jungle off? That's been the big thing for him. So the most winning matchup that Vitality have is top lane. Like Lucian just smashes GP. Like the GP can't do anything into this matchup. So I was mostly expecting Mowgli to be playing top side to at least force out some summoners from, because stopwatch cooldown's 10 minutes, so you want to definitely gank before then. Karthus counter gank. Like you should be able to. You'll notice that the Ezreal for now is pushing in. Like if you can ward camps, you should be able to find times where you can find just straight up advantages in the Lucian versus GP matchup through Jarvan threat. Like Jarvan is, you know, it's Jarvan versus Karthus, so we all know how this matchup goes. Like Jarvan needs to impact the map, and Karthus is happy just to hang back and farm. But, you know, Control Ward is sticking top side. Mowgli's focusing on camps. He's actually got a camp lead against the Karthus. It's something that you almost never see. So we'll play through. Early game is pretty quiet until this point. And then, how does this happen? So Karthus comes near mid lane, with Taliyah tending towards her control ward. Double flash, try to make this happen. I mean, you can't really criticize Jizuke for that play, right? He took double flash for the jungle attention there. So the trade up in bot lane, out of mana, but huge health bar lead in the 2v2. And then the mid lane, you take 2 summoners away from the enemy, so you can't hate that either. As Mowgli, I mean, the only issue you see for Vitality right now is that Mowgli hasn't been able to find a meaningful lead on the map, and Broxah now gets to walk up for Scuttle. Like, this is a great time to walk up as Broxah, because you know the enemy mid laner has already pulled away from the mid lane, so you're getting free Scuttle and thus free camps onto Broxah, who hits level 5. Backing in Vision. But Mowgli's only been able to power farm this game, even though, like, I feel like both mid lane and top lane have quite a lot of gank assist for him. Like, Lucian only has damage, but blowing summoners from Whippo shouldn't be that tricky. Like, you're getting a CS lead, but nothing much more than that in the top side. And even mid lane, like, Lissandra's pretty predictable in when she chooses to walk up, and Seismic Shove into Jarvan damage can actually be some cheeky burst that before the Aftershock proc even arms. And if you can just bait out Aftershock beforehand, there's some kill pressure onto Nemesis. So I think it's actually Mowgli was just pretty outpathed after the late invade, and then was never in sync with jungle camp spawn timers to either punish the Karthus or impact the lanes. Like, there was a lot to work with in these lanes, and so far the defensive stuff from Fnatic has been pretty solid, and I would say the offensive stuff has been pretty stunted. Like, Brox is spending more time in lanes than Mowgli is. Like, Broxah is actually giving up camps on the map to relieve pressure from Whippo, which is something you need to do given its GP into Lucian. But, you know, there is a cost to what he's doing. He's not full clearing his camps and then sitting topside until his camps respawn. Like, he's actually pathing around in a way to be a supportive jungler, which is what Broxah is known as a player first and foremost, but also doing a good job. He has a camp lead, a very small one, but a camp lead, and also has been able to counter gank much more than you might expect. Gank comes off. This one's pre 10 minutes. Let's watch the replay here. The Whippo flash here is a bit peculiar. What actually kills him? We should slow it down. I think he dies to the auto attack passive here from Whippo. But it's a very cookie cutter gank. It's one that's scouted as well, so Whippo for sure is overstaying. Jizuke shows on the ward here, so everyone knows exactly what's happening. That's why you see the back channeled. He could have just disengaged from turret, but chooses not to when Whippo is close, which to me is a really weird case, because it says to me that he wants to walk up and try to take the minion wave. Like, you can start ulting minion waves. Consider the point where he knows he's getting turret dived. He knows I'll tell you exactly when he knows. He knows now. You could start thinking about ulting the minion wave now, but doesn't do that. Like, there's all this time where you can deal with the minion wave in one way or the other. And yes, you're not going to get all the minions, but you could have pulled away. You could have started ulting the minion. The ult of the minion wave actually happens now, which is so late into the piece. So that's just accepting the fact that you're dead. So I think the only reason to walk up and try to barrel link here is because you're like, I want to kill these minions and then I'm going to die. But then he flashes as well. So this is a really scattered decision from Whippo. I think he gives up the maximum in a scenario where he could have just pulled away earlier and had the safety of his Karthus, or ulted earlier and missed out on half a minion wave, and instead he flashes, ults, and dies. So, and that's actually pretty poor from Bwipo, because now also the validity of the blind pick GP is gone because you want to ult bot lane. It's just really peculiar from him. I think you need a more clear idea of what you're trying to do in that spot, and given that Jizuke was spotted on a ward and it was a cut a dive, like, it was very strange that he died there. Yeah, he could have flashed earlier. He could have not flashed at all. He could have ulted earlier. There's a lot of things you could do, and it's almost like he conspired to lose the maximum there, Bwipo. So that's pretty disappointing from him. Again, the matchup sucks, as we know. That's a really good timing on the stasis, though. Oh. You hate it. This is really well played. Watch this. That auto. Now you know he's going to have to flash for the final one. Does he pop the auto or not? Let's watch it again. Let's see if he pops an auto. It might be too hard to tell with the visual noise. I want to see if the auto was in the air. Okay, the auto isn't in the air. He stasis as the flash comes in, but it's a masterful bait. Cabochard takes 2 turret shots. Brox has got all. Awesome play. See, Bwipo, you messed up on that previous turret dive, but you brought me back. Really well played with the bait there. Pre 10 minutes, that play works. With 10 minutes 30 when the play happens, it doesn't work. Wait. Let's rewatch the end of this play, because this actually happens. I forgot about this. So Mowgli comes and takes tower aggro, because of course he does. Misses flash EQ. Mowgli. This is a really nice juke up from Bwipo, but then Mowgli is just so done. And then he tries to tank for Jizuke, knowing he'll die for the best case scenario, 1 for 3. Man, Bwipo played that really, really well. Dancing Shoes GP is big here. The best part is when Nemesis teleports, because, like, this is really well played from Bwipo. He knows that he has to juke up or he dies. And he does. And then just walks into the turret, and Mowgli doesn't disengage turret, has the Bloodlust for kill. And Nemesis only teleports after Bwipo's done all the hard work, which is kind of really, really amusing. Like, almost got away with not teleporting and getting a 2 for 0 on the GP. Alright, dance moves on Bwipo. Make it happen, LEC. Give me a Dancing with the Stars with Bwipo segment. Really good stasis timing. And the saddest thing is that the free Rift Herald was going to be picked up because Mowgli and Jack Troll had gone to get Rift Herald topside. Jack Troll had already left lane first to make this happen. So if Vitality make a really good measured play, like, this is the right time to roam. They super counter roam the Alistar. Alistar's in base. And it's a free Rift Herald while they have pressure around top. But first Cabochard gets baited, and then no doubt tells his chat 1 HP. And then they lose a further death and don't get the Rift Herald. And now they come back and kill him, but, like, all the damage was done beforehand, right? Like, that's only... They don't get ultra insult upon injury, but that actually sends them really far behind in terms of tempo around where they had the biggest lead possible. So Fnatic and their job of, remember, delaying this game and injecting gold into their carries, super successful with how that played out. Now, they will still eventually lose these objectives pre-14 minutes, so there's no way to give that up. But it's all containment from Fnatic. That was their game plan as a 5-man squad against Vitality's 5-man squad, but also in this particular draft. And this is a really nice roam. So Fnatic, when they make their play, they walk through 3 control wards in the river. They take an Ocean Drake to help the GP laning phase. And Vitality, you know, this play is very tunnel visioned. The play is that Reckless doesn't have cleanse and went too far up. But consider that they get, at this point, the official confirmation of Ocean Drake. They already knew it to some degree because every team knows which side of the map they have advantages on or not. Like, they're so far up the lane here trying to make this play happen. Like how often does Reckless go all the way down the lane and die 2v1? You know, like, it's just not a play that happens very often. And Nemesis also was last seen mid lane roaming bot lane a long while ago. And you saw Drake come down. So this is really playing for lane only play from the side of Vitality. They have their summoners up and think they're fine, but this is a really good lane, really good claw spot from Nemesis. It's good roam timing from him. You know, he was playing roaming champions that he didn't get to roam on to open the season on the Galio, and now he's roaming well on roaming champions, so nicely played by him. And Reckless picking up the kills here obviously is the huge further issue. It was already not a bad matchup for Vayne, so you thought CS for CS is not the surprise, but the 2 kills is means 2 items going to come a bit earlier. And it didn't even require GP help. Remember, the GP Karthus is best at playing bot lane because they can gank and counter gank without even being on that side of the map. And instead, it was a Vitality mistake that got the double kill going in that lane. Like, if you just play based on what's in front of you, it's like, whoa, he walked up, let's kill him. But you also have literally no vision bot side, and your team is top side. You're always going to be outnumbered, whether they're waiting in the gank brush or they're on the Drake. They're going to get there first, and I think there was just too much thought put into wouldn't it be cool to kill Reckless, and not enough into the full parts of the play. Also, coming back to that play for a second. As the play starts, like, Jizuke is threatening a roam top side. Like, if he's bot side, like, and he comes in with his wall, like, they could get the counter gank off, right? But that was not the call here. That was clearly not the call. So I don't know, they have their own global and then don't play towards the global, which is a pretty big problem. All right, you want to ask about this question in the chat about Jizuke's movements? Let's go all the way back. So Jizuke comes from base and gets the lane shoved into him while his team is taking Rift Herald. Jizuke goes topside because they have a top turret that's pretty low and they want to take it down with the Rift Herald. So the original plan for the Rift Herald here, I would imagine. So, like, let's talk about not thinking about the enemy doing Drake at all. You can go topside and get the Rift Herald charge and just kill that turret instantly. And that's what they're doing. So the play here from Vitality's call, what's happening here is the play is, I'm going to jam Rift Herald topside and get more gold onto Cabochard. And there's only 3 plates left. He's going to actually kill it all in one push. That's the call. So Talia is roaming topside just in case they need a counter gank there. But because they have a ward on Gromp, they should be more aware that it's so much more, infinitely more likely that Brox is bot side, and that they won't need to use Weaver's Wall. But it's further guaranteed they're going to get the entire turret bot side. That's why Talia's roaming top side. The Rift Herald charge would have killed the turret, but as he goes to jam down Rift Herald, the whole play bot side happens, and they just get the kills there. So this is the top 3 of the map and the bottom 2 of the map from Vitality's side, completely disconnected. The set piece play top side is aborted, so the Rift Herald isn't even put down to get any gold there. They're going to end up using it in the mid lane, I believe, and Jizuke does come back to mid lane and say, okay, there's no one here, I'm going to be able to get a lot of turret plates here, and they do get the turret in mid, which overall is very valuable, while Lucian gets some pushes top side. But instead of being ahead of the play and making the play with the Rift Herald, like, it's Rift Herald versus Ocean Drake, so Rift Herald is just way better than Ocean Drake, but they still trade down because the bot side was so disconnected they just can't get free objectives everywhere. So it's one of those things where they're trying to do a lot of things. And like Sojiro is saying, tower top was safely theirs no matter what. And I agree with you on that. But that's not what the minimap, because we can watch the minimap as we're rolling now. Like, this minimap movement from Jizuke is about going to top side to get more, instead of playing for his lane, which we saw he eventually does now, which is pushing in, or going to bot lane. Like, at the end of the day, Vitality were confused. Like, they could do a lot of things safely and did neither of it. So bot lane just needed to pull back and do nothing, and they would have gotten top lane turret, and they probably didn't even need to invest Rift Turret for that and could have used it mid lane. But that's not what happened, and it ends up just giving Fnatic too much into the game. Doesn't give them a gold lead yet, but yeah. Going bot lane was impossible without vision, for sure. And I'm not suggesting that he should have gone bot lane. I'm saying he could have gone bot lane. Like, it's one of those things where, as in Jizuke's spot, you either help start fighting for bot lane vision and then start threatening our own bot lane, or you play for mid lane as a one call, but slightly walking top side and then doing nothing is not a great call overall. So now Cabochard's taken the easy objective, and the thing about top lane AD carries, and I see this a lot with Vayne top as well, is like you pick Vayne top, and then your team gets the advantage of having an extra flex pick the enemy don't see coming, because they assume it's a duo lane pick, and then they pick a bad matchup into it, and then the Vayne wins that matchup and takes turret. But actually transferring your lead past first turret as Lucian top or as Vayne top is actually really hard. I think mid lane AD carries have a little bit easier because they have less places to run. But teleport flanks don't work on AD carries. It's actually very hard for Lucian to grow the lead that he has any further onto GP. And GP is very good at sniping minion waves, barrels, and ultimates. So it's one of those things where, you know, Lucian in position, like where Lucian should go now is always a little bit up in the air. Now, Vitality tried to negatively counter-rotate mid lane, and Ezreal Braum want to be mid lane, right? So this part makes sense for them. But Fnatic with Moby Boots and still map control on the bot side just start chasing for kills. Now, this is actually pretty greedy, all things considered. Like, Vitality, their approach to this fight looks like it's going to win the fight. It's a really interesting one. So we'll talk about the team fight here. So Fnatic come for their roam gank. That part we understand. They dive pretty far. They have no vision of what's happening above them. They only know that Lucian can't be there, and they don't think Talia can be there fast. And then they're just bursting onto one. This is a good Weaver's Wall because it puts them in a really awkward spot. Bwipo's not there. The problem is, though, is that Lucian can never be here. So it's Jizuke flying in late to get there for a 5v3. So Hylissang turns on, and you watch how this plays out. Remember, 5v3, now 5v4, can only be 5v4, because Lucian's going to take forever to get there. They get the kill onto Hylissang, and you're like, alright, 4v4 is the scenario right now. Mowgli, the only problem they have in this play is that everything to here is pretty perfect. Vitality actually punish Fnatic going in too aggressively. But then Mowgli, unfortunately, it feels like one of those comms issues that can definitely happen because Jack Troll can't get there. Jizuke's summoners are down. And, like, watch how everyone paused except Mowgli. Jizuke's pulling back. He's not going in for further kills. Attila seems to be down with going in for this play. It's a really big ult. Like, Cinderhulk Jarvan is all about crowd control. And they get this down, right? They get a really good ult. It's a good stasis timing, too, so he can't be killed as a 1. But then, by the time Lucian shows up to be involved to do the last pieces of damage, Jarvan's used everything. Jack Troll is dead. So Mowgli's out. Jack Troll's out. Jizuke already was showing that he wasn't looking to hard commit on this. And they have no more chase abilities. Like, you can press Q on Ezreal and Talia, but you're opting into fighting into a place where you'll take some trade damage and Karthus ult's still available. So this is one of those I can ult scenarios for Mowgli where communication actually hinders them even further here because they trade down after actually picking up a good pick onto Hillsong, who went too far. So yeah, it's just too much. Too bold a re-engage from Mowgli. They didn't read the scenario very smartly there, and ends up costing them a lot because, again, the start of this play is actually really good. The Weaver's Wall is excellent. The turn onto Hillsong is really good here. Fnatic are zoned out of help, but re-engage when Lucian still can't be there is just straight up wrong. Like, Cabochard has so much of the gold in this game. He got all the turret plates topside, and he's on 1.5, 2-item Lucian. Like, Cabochard chases in and dies almost, right? He lives, I believe. But they get no value out of Lucian at his strongest point. Did he have the 2 items in this fight? So he didn't have the Black Cleaver done. That's why he was staying at the minion wave. That's why he's not involved in the fight. But, you don't get much stronger than that particular time in the game. Let's watch this. So they know Fnatic's on Drake. Lucian is again in base. Jizuke can wall here to try to separate off someone, but the wall, we know does nothing. He doesn't have vision, so he's hoping that he's going to be able to cut someone off when it comes to a team fight. So when is the blue ward placed? So the blue ward is placed around this moment. Oh, this is the replay. Alright, so it's placed during the replay, so we don't see it, but the blue flank ward is a really good flank ward by Fnatic. It's GP coming from a flank, but he's flanking a Talia, so he actually feels really good about that scenario. Nemesis coming from the bot side, as we know. Now, Reckless will eventually die on the one end, so it ends up being a 1-for-1, but Fnatic get the objective. Kind of an interesting musical chairs here because Reckless is kind of the tasty bait and Talia's the tasty bait. So definitely not a huge issue for Vitality. But it feels like Vitality are kind of being read kind of like teams would read IG in terms of like they'll always fight. Like we're definitely seeing Vitality will always gleefully accept a fight, whether it's smart or not. And they have a comp that wants to fight early, so I think that's fine for this particular game. But it's definitely something that Fnatic seems fully aware of. So this replay is not that interesting. We already went over it. So where does this leave the game? We're 20 minutes in, and Vayne has 2 items, which is a problem. Because TP Vayne, didn't even have to go heal to survive the laning phase, so Ezreal Braum and felt fine. Has the items to have an extended team fight lead. And that was not even with GP help, like we assumed the GP was being picked for. Karthus is also way ahead in terms of items compared to the Jarvan. And right now, map control is actually not necessarily in Vitality's advantage. It's actually a pretty even map state. And when you had Lucian into GP and, Ezreal, any Ezreal duo lane, which is always about getting turret and rotating, plus some globals, Vitality would want to be pretty significantly ahead at this point, or able to set up really good side lane scenarios where they can take further turrets and move the map control away from the enemy. But Fnatic have controlled bot side of the map basically the entire game. They're moving their control top side now because Baron is the pressing objective that's just spawned on the map. So Reckless having 2 items, like Reckless should probably be hitting 2 items around 24 to 26 minutes against a comp like this, but he's got them way earlier. And Fnatic actually have really, really high Baron damage because Karthus Vayne just delete Baron. Their Baron turn, Lucian Asta is pretty decent, so you just want to bait top side of the Rift right now if you're Fnatic. Like, you feel like you've done all but outscale the team of Vitality at this point. Bit of a sloppy fight. So, fights for Fnatic are won when Reckless is able to actually tumble in with 6 stacks against his rage, but he actually never gets to. He's trying to warm it up on the minion wave, but then by then they'd already super over pursued, and they will trade up anyway as Fnatic, so it's not a lost team fight by any means, but they're a little bit split on their execution here, and it ends up costing them in some ways. But it's all about Baron. Fnatic have really, really strong Baron team. So it's very hard for Mowgli to do too much here. He can check with Flag, which is a nice start. Double control ward on Baron. I would assume that's a mistake, given they're both in the same part of the Baron. Doesn't matter. But Fnatic are able to play out side lanes pretty cleanly in this game. Like, we're never seeing Taliyah find side lane pressure. The first 2 turrets of the game are down for both sides, but no 3-turret lead. Jisuke has a lot of CS, but he hasn't been able to make any combo plays with the team, and he's just actually accepting minion waves that are pushed into him by Lissandra with teleport, which is definitely not ideal. And given the outscale scenario, you're at the point already where from 40,000 gold onwards, every 1,000 gold that Fnatic picks up is better spent by them. So it's almost like there's a debuff on the gold that's earned by Vitality. Like, every further gold here, because of the champions on Fnatic's side, they just spend gold better. It's so likely that 2 out of 3 of Lucian, Ezreal, and Taliyah are going to be zoned out by Cannon Barrage, Death Defied, The Wall, some Chainlink Barrels. Like, it's really hard to actually maximize your damage. Like, Taliyah, Ezreal, and Lucian can do a lot of consistent damage, but given the threats on the enemy team and their scaling, like, it's very difficult for them to actually put out damage for damage. Like, it's very likely that one member of Vitality does no damage, someone does half damage, someone pops off, but Fnatic will always be able to really maximize their damage. So that's one of the big struggles we see right now, and that's why the game being in a fairly even state gold-wise and map control probably lead to Fnatic is a pretty big problem for Vitality. You see fights like this, right? It's another one of these moments is where, you know, Vitality, like, we need to fight now. We're scared about scaling. So Mowgli walks up and engages. Like, there's no reason for him to face check that bush unless they're gonna engage, but it's all so scattered. Like, how is Lucian and Taliyah doing damage in this fight? This is the part that I think has been kind of new to Vitality of 2019 is, remember, who do Vitality have? They have 3 good consistent damage carries. Note all of them on the top of your screen. Attila, Cabochard, Jisuke. Let's see how much damage they got off in this fight. Vitality, Attila has to Arcane Shift in, flash away, and then before Cabochard and Jisuke have done any damage, both of their frontliners are down. So there's no synergy here between Mowgli trying to walk up and face check and look for fights and the damage threats. Like, Mowgli is making a pretty bold choice to walk into the river brush, but he should EQ out of the river brush, right? Because he has no carries around. Instead, he EQs further in and then just gets him and Braum into execute range. Like, this is really, really poor synergy between members here at a time when it felt like Fnatic's comp was about to start to outscale anyway. And then you just get the worst of both worlds because basically Mowgli, Jisuke, Jack Troll all die for free. Never any threat onto Reckless, never any threat onto anyone really. Broxah, yes, they get close to, but very quickly they're like, wait, we can't deal with this. And then Fnatic can just bulldoze Baron. They have insanely fast Baron, and the enemy jungle is dead. So free Baron for Fnatic, and that's basically goodbye to the enemy team. But this is, again, we get a different angle, and this is what I want you to understand watching from home, is Mowgli walks in. The only reason to walk into that brush, you really expect there to be at least Broxah, probably Nemesis as well, is to start a fight. But Cabochard, Jisuke, Attila all kiting up, and then they, of course, hear the call of, oh, I found them. And then Mowgli can EQ defensively, but he EQs aggressively. And it just exacerbates how little damage Attila, Cabochard, and Jisuke can do. Like, this is a squad not in any form of synergy. Like, this is really, really poor play. And just not the Vitality, like, that we remember from Worlds. And I think that's the reality here. Like, this is really, really poor. And then it just closes out from here, right? You just close out further kills. And now you got Baron, an actual gold lead. Now, Fnatic's team doesn't siege particularly well. It's worth mentioning. Lissandra, Vayne, not great in siege. Gangplank, melee champion. Karthus, not great in siege. They can't walk up that well because they do get poked out by damage. So, I mean, Sojiro says, to be honest, Fnatic backline was vulnerable. What I don't understand is why the 3-carry team mid didn't go for Brox and Reckless and sacrifice Mowgli. Let's look over it one more time. So the backline to me is Reckless, Bwipo. Nemesis is not really a backliner, right? Karthus is squishy but does a lot of damage. So they're not getting anything onto Reckless or Bwipo at this point. Now, you can't kill, Reckless. So you can't do anything to Reckless and Bwipo because Jarvan is already out of the fight, right? At this point. They don't want to walk around the left side here. Otherwise, Hylissang will flank them and headbutt pulverize them. So they have to go the long way around this brush to do damage. Like, you can't, like, Reckless goes the safest possible way behind the wall, and Bwipo can walk through because he's GP. So the issue is, like, how did Zuke Cabochard ever do damage here if that's the time that the Alistair comes in? Like, there's just no way they can do damage there. Like, they can't straight line go through. And even if the Alistair wasn't, like, showing from that particular angle, it's pretty risky to run straight headfirst into Summoners up GP, Summoners up Vayne. So, like, you don't really want to do that either. It's just a really poor fight to pick because what I want to say is, like, the lane positioning up the mid lane of the carries, which is, I want to show you here. Like, Cabochard, Jizuke, and Attila aren't thinking about fighting. Mowgli is thinking about fighting. So even if the Alistair, like, makes them second guess getting a speck of damage in, like, they were never in position to do this fight. So there's a disconnect for sure between members there that ends up just exacerbating an early game that was already moving away from them. And now there's control wards down that Fnatic don't even care about. They've got Baron. They're just happy to rotate through Jizuke's lane or whatever lane they want to go to. You can run up with Bo, but he's got Sterak's Gauge and Flash up. This is not as far behind as he was on the Rise game. Why is Hylissang this far up? Hylissang having so much fun running up actually just does kind of run it down here. Nice seismic shove, but I mean the inner turret's already taken out. Coach is not going to be happy with that one, Hylissang, but not the biggest problem. Like, specifically look at Karthus. Like, Karthus is unbelievably powerful with Death Cap already at this point. It means that Karthus can also play side lanes really flexibly and just respond with ultimate. And while that's something that Karthus can always do, when your ult does this much damage, like, your lane assignments here around the Karthus are really, really flexible because he's basically everywhere at all times. They have to play multiple lanes because we already mentioned their siege isn't great, so it's a lot of Fnatic cutting through jungle and Vitality being too scared to walk up. So this first Baron is all about taking easy objectives. In this case, it's the inner turrets. They cut between. Vitality have to take the longest route around. They don't have blue buff on Jizuke, so something's got to give everywhere they go. So Fnatic just kind of have a cash injection Baron for Baron number 1. And at this point in the game, like, if you said what are the chances that Vitality comes back in, I mean, you just don't. Like, their comp we already kind of discussed is so much about feasting early or finding side lane control or using globals to get there, and that hasn't happened. And so now Karthus, Lissandra, Alistair's enough of a front line, and you see them going for a pretty... I wonder what provokes this. They see... Maybe they see... Yeah, they do see Vayne back, and they just all in onto Hylissang. They're like, okay, let's fight 5v4. Problem is, Reckless's TP is up. But, you know, it's not the worst call from Vitality. Like, in that scenario, you just hidden hope. You're like, all right, let's get a 5v4. It's better than anything else we're going to get. And with how the side lanes have been looking like they're going to tend, and with how Fnatic's been playing the map, I actually think it's the right call to all in onto the Alistair there. Like, it sounds terrible because it isn't great, but you made enough errors earlier that you don't get to make the controlled play anymore. That means they lose Inferno for free. $9.6, so it's just back to the Blade of the Ruined King third Ezreal. In this next series, which was Splice versus SK Gaming, there was the first sighting of the Luden's Ezreal that lets you kind of replace what you had before one-to-one cleaner. I think most AD carriers are going to stick with Blade of the Ruined King for now, but I think Luden's will be a consideration. Deep Vision was placed by Vitality around this Baron earlier. It's a question of how can they... The problem for them with Deep Vision is they have no flankers. Braum is not a flanking support. Lucian and Ezreal aren't going to flank teleport, so it gives them vision that's not likely to be swept, but that's all it does. Why does Vitality walk up here? So Jackdaw just wants to clear wards and gets it all in from pretty far away. Like, so he can probably feel pretty hard done by, but then it's just gold lead. Like, this is the wallet smack here. Watch Jizuke explode. Hooray for Karthus damage. Here's the map state when they walked up. The map state is we have deep vision. Now, the vision, the regular ward that's placed to the left of our screen, like right in the corner of the box of vision we're zoomed on, probably should spot them around Baron. So you could argue, do you need to walk this far up? Now, he's not that far up, right? Like, he's trying to make a play with very limited vision. The thing that they don't plug and play is that Hylissang could be flanking from the right side. But I think the pressing argument of did they need vision at that point with the wards they had down? You could argue no. I can't know for sure without vision toggles that aren't available. But I think in that particular case, the upside of getting vision there is not actually that big because you can spot most of Baron things happening. Like someone, at least... Here's what I'll say. I believe that vision doesn't spot people killing the Baron if they're in very close proximity, but at least Karthus Defier would be spotted. You would see some particles with it, and that vision was already down. So in hindsight, Jackdaw didn't need to walk up in this game, and it was a nice flank spot by Hylissang. So trying to actually punish is Jizuke, but like this is really tricky to pull off, right? Kills Lissandra instantly. You forget how much damage Talia does. I think replays like this and then the team fight that we slowed down, there's been at least 3 fights in this game where you can tell that with perfect comms and proper discussion around macro, Vitality would make another choice. But they didn't. They went for the most tunnel vision choice. You think of the bot lane 2v2 where they ran at Vayne and died. And then you think of most recently the play around first that Baron vision that we saw, and then before that the play where the 3 carries didn't go in and Mowgli did. Like those are 3 plays they would want to have back and play out differently. But that is also the plays Vitality have made the whole second round robin onwards. And that's also the reason that Fnatic chose them is they looked at Vitality as a team that would trip up on execution and that they would be able to outlast. In this case, they just got ahead, so the outlasting part wasn't relevant. But good read by Fnatic. Shout out to the Fnatic coaching staff and management because they thought they knew who Vitality was. Vitality was exactly that team, and don't need to zoom in on this one. 9,000 gold lead, outscale comp. This ends up being a really comfortable victory. So my main takeaway here is that Fnatic exactly judged Vitality based on the real Vitality, not the... That's the thing. Is like, again, people are saying they always play like that. I just think that at the end of the day, they make a lot of mistakes, and they've always made a lot of mistakes. And Fnatic probably always liked their matchup into them, but the amount of disconnection that was present more recently, in spite of their... Like, you think about last year's Vitality, you think of really good play around split push pressure. And in this game, they get a pretty big Lucian, and then the Lucian's never at the fights because they're fighting and not focusing on split push pressure. And that just tells you that they're not following a single plan. Like, I think of Vitality games in summer last year, and I'm reminded of all the games where they didn't play particularly well in terms of like 5v5 fights or anything like that, but they were so good at like getting the maximum amount of push around Jizuke's lane, and then Cabochard poking in, like a lot of flying V scenarios where they were able to close games from pressure rather than kills in terms of team fights. And I just don't think we've seen that Vitality this season for a long, long time. Like, I feel like this Vitality still tries to play with the soul of the old Vitality, but they trip up on execution a lot more than we saw in the past. So that will be the closing of the VOD review for Fnatic versus Vitality. I'm going to take a very quick break and go to the bathroom, then answer some questions, and we'll close out with questions on this, any subscriptions and donations, and then that's the docket for today's stream. We're 7 hours into the stream, so understand if you want to close up now. Thank you very much for watching so far, but I'm going to take a quick break, play a couple of ads, and then be back for a bit of a roundup. I'll keep myself available for a bit of questions here in order to answer any burning things people have, but be back very shortly.